The tea had gone cold 20 minutes ago, but Draven Cardo didn't notice. His attention fixed on the auction block where a green-skinned woman stumbled under the weight of iron shackles. The crowd's roar washed over him like static, meaningless noise from meaningless lives. He shifted against the stone wall, leather creaking softly. The massive sheath across his back held 15 blades, each one humming with restrained violence. A small white rabbit charm dangled from the third sword's hilt, swaying with his breathing. The charm looked absurd among weapons forged to kill gods. The slaver, a bloated Syrian with gold teeth and cheap tattoos, grabbed the woman's hair and yanked her forward. She didn't scream, didn't beg, just straightened her spine and endured. "Look at this beauty!" The slaver's voice cracked through amplifiers. "Former royalty, perfect for private collections." Draven's jaw tightened. He'd been 3 days late to her world. 3 days, and an entire civilization had fallen to corporate raiders. By the time he'd arrived, the hellish throne was empty. Its occupant fled, and millions sold into bondage. The woman's bright blue eyes swept the crowd with quiet dignity. When her gaze found his, she didn't look away. No plea, no desperation, just acknowledgement. One prisoner recognizing another. The slaver yanked her hair again, harder this time. Her head snapped back, and a small sound escaped her lips. Draven stood. The simple movement sent ripples through the crowd. Conversations died. Heads turned. The slaver's grip loosened as every eye tracked to the figure in black leather and woolen socks. "Hey, friend." The slaver's voice carried forced cheer. "You interested in bidding? Starting at 5,000 credits for this. Let her go." The words cut through the plaza like a blade through silk. Draven stepped forward, his bare legs steady on the ancient stones. The crowd parted instinctively, some backing away, others craning for a better view. "I'm sorry?" The slaver's smile twitched. "This is a legal auction sanctioned by—" I said let her go. The woman, Lisa, according to the auction manifest, watched him approach. Her expression remained neutral, but something shifted in those impossibly blue eyes. Not hope, curiosity maybe, or recognition of what was about to happen. "Listen, stranger." The slaver's voice gained an edge. "I don't know who you think you are, but I'm from Earth." Silence crashed over the plaza like a physical force. The slaver's face went pale green. Someone in the crowd whispered a prayer in Old Galactic. A child started crying. Draven folded his hands in front of his chest, fingers interlaced, head bowed. The gesture looked peaceful, reverent even. "Forgive my sin," he whispered, "and his." The fourth sword rose from its sheath without being touched. It floated beside Draven's shoulder, vibrating with barely contained hunger. The blade caught the plaza's harsh light and threw it back in cruel angles. "You can't," the slaver's voice cracked. "The law, Earthers don't interfere unless what? Unless it's your assigned duty, and this isn't. This is just commerce." Draven's eyes met the slaver's. "You're right." The sword moved faster than thought. One moment the slaver was talking, the next he was falling, his words cut off mid-syllable. Blood pooled on the auction platform, mixing with centuries of accumulated grime. The crowd erupted. Some screamed, others ran. A few brave souls activated recording devices, knowing this footage would be worth more than their lives. Draven walked to the platform and knelt beside Lisa. Her shackles were ceremonial, meant to humiliate rather than restrain. He touched the locks with his fingertips, and they dissolved like ice in summer. "Can you walk?" His voice was softer now, almost gentle. She rubbed her wrists, studying him. "You just killed yourself for a stranger." "Maybe. No maybe about it. Every system in the galaxy will know about this within the hour." Draven helped her to her feet. She was tall, nearly his height, with a dancer's grace and a warrior's bearing. Her skin was the color of new leaves, smooth and unmarked except for intricate silver tattoos that spiraled up her arms. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lisa, and you're Draven Cardo, one of the 2 remaining hellish throne hunters. How'd you—" "I make it my business to know the names of people who might save my world. You were 3 days late." They walked through the stunned crowd toward the plaza's edge. No one tried to stop them. No one even looked directly at them. Draven's reputation preceded him like a funeral shroud. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For being late or for what you just did?" "Both." She glanced at him sideways. "You don't look sorry." "I don't look like a lot of things." They reached the plaza's outer ring where cargo haulers waited for passengers. Draven selected one at random, a rust-eaten transport that had seen better decades. The driver took one look at him and waved them aboard without asking for payment. Inside the cramped passenger compartment, Lisa settled onto a torn vinyl seat. She moved with unconscious elegance, as if the shabby surroundings were a palace ballroom. "So," she said, "want to tell me why you just signed both our death warrants?" Draven sat across from her, the sword sheath propped against his shoulder. "You assume I had a choice. Everyone has a choice. That's what makes us sentient." "No, everyone has options. Choice is what happens when your options all lead to the same place." She leaned forward, those blue eyes intense. "And where's that?" "Wherever you're supposed to be." The transport lurched into motion, carrying them away from the plaza and into the city's tangled arteries. Through the grimy windows, Draven watched the crowds thin as news of the incident spread. By nightfall, the plaza would be empty except for cleanup crews and investigators. "You're not what I expected," Lisa said. "What did you expect?" "A monster. All the stories about Earthers." She trailed off, studying his face. "You drink tea before killing people. After too. That's not funny." "Wasn't meant to be." She was quiet for a long moment, then, "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me as more than cargo." Draven looked out the window at the passing cityscape. Neon signs advertised pleasures in a dozen languages. Street vendors hawked their wares to anyone with credits. Life continued, oblivious to the moment when everything changed. "What happens now?" Lisa asked. "Now they send the enforcer." "The what?" "Someone whose job it is to kill Earthers who step out of line." "And you're not concerned about that?" Draven touched the rabbit charm, feeling its soft fabric between his fingers. "I've been concerned about death since I was 8 years old. After a while, it stops being scary and starts being inevitable." "That's a hell of a way to live." "It's the only way I know." The transport shuddered to a halt at a transit hub deep in the city's commercial district. Draven paid the driver with a handful of credits and led Lisa into the crowd of commuters and traders. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere quiet, somewhere I can think." "About what?" "About whether I just made the biggest mistake of my life or finally did something right." They found a small cafe tucked between a parts dealer and a black market clinic. The owner, an elderly vegan with kind eyes, served them real coffee and asked no questions. Draven sat with his back to the wall, watching the street through grimy windows. "You know," Lisa said, stirring her coffee, "I was trained to read people. Body language, micro-expressions, vocal patterns. It's how royalty survives in a galaxy full of liars." And you're terrified." Draven's hand stilled on his cup. "Of what?" "Of being human." The words hit him like a physical blow. He set down his coffee and looked at her, really looked. Her green skin caught the cafe's warm light, and those blue eyes seemed to see straight through him. "You think you know me? I think you're tired. I think you've been killing people for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to save someone." "I save people all the time. I free entire worlds from tyrants." "That's not the same thing." No, that's duty." What you did today was choice. Outside, the street began to empty as word spread through the underground networks. Draven Cardo had broken the law. The enforcer would come. Anyone smart would find somewhere else to be. I should go, Lisa said, standing. You've done enough. Sit down. I'm not your responsibility. Sit down. She hesitated, then sank back into her chair. Why? Because I'm not done being human yet. A tremor ran through the building, subtle, barely noticeable. Draven's eyes snapped to the window. In the distance, a black satellite had appeared in the sky, its surface reflecting the city's lights like a malevolent star. What is that? Lisa asked. Draven stood, throwing credits on the table. That's our cue to leave. What is it? A summoning beacon. Someone just called in the enforcer. They stepped into the street as the first deep pulse rippled through the air. Windows rattled. Car alarms shrieked. In the distance, a dog howled. How long do we have? Lisa asked. Until morning, maybe less. Then what? Draven looked at her, this fallen princess who'd thanked him for seeing her as human. This stranger who'd read his soul in a single glance. This woman who'd somehow made him remember what it felt like to choose. Then we find out if I'm worth saving. The beacon pulsed again, and somewhere in the darkness, death began its approach. The pulse from the beacon grew stronger, rattling the cafe windows behind them. Draven grabbed Lisa's hand, pulling her into the maze of alleyways that snaked through the district's underbelly. This way. They ran through narrow passages lined with steam pipes and electrical conduits. The air tasted of ozone and fear. Behind them, the beacon's rhythm quickened, each pulse sending tremors through the city's foundation. Where are we going? Lisa's voice was steady despite their pace. Up. They reached a maintenance ladder bolted to the side of a towering hab block. Draven climbed first, his sword sheath clanking against the metal rungs. Lisa followed, her movements fluid and silent. 30 stories up, they emerged onto a rooftop garden abandoned years ago. Wild vines had claimed the space, creating a green canopy that filtered the city's neon glow. In the distance, ships passed low enough to stir the leaves with their exhaust. Not bad for a last stand, Lisa said, settling onto a stone bench overgrown with luminescent moss. This isn't a last stand. No? Then what is it? Draven looked out over the city sprawl. Somewhere down there, the enforcer was coming. Somewhere else, his actions had already triggered consequences that would ripple across the galaxy. A moment of peace before the storm. Lisa studied his profile in the dim light. You're not what the stories say. What do the stories say? That Earthers are cold, efficient, that you feel nothing when you kill. Maybe that's true. Is it? Draven turned to face her. In the garden's soft glow, her green skin seemed to shimmer. Her blue eyes held depths he couldn't fathom. I don't know anymore. She moved closer on the bench, close enough that he could smell her scent, something like rain on summer leaves. What do you feel now? Like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff and I can't see the bottom. Are you afraid? Terrified? Of dying? Of living? The beacon pulsed again, closer now. Through the garden's canopy, they could see its black form descending toward the city's heart. How long has it been? Lisa asked. Since what? Since you touched someone without killing them. The question caught him off guard. He looked down at his hands, scarred, steady, trained for violence. I don't remember. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She reached out, her fingers tracing the old scars on his knuckles. Her touch was electric, alien, impossible. You saved me, she said softly. I condemned you. Same thing sometimes. Her hand moved up his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. When she reached his shoulder, she found the edge of an old scar, one that disappeared beneath his collar. What's this from? A lesson I learned too late. About what? About the price of being human. The beacon's pulse grew irregular, more urgent. Time was running out, and they both knew it. Draven. Yeah? I'm glad you were there today, even though it might kill us both. Especially because of that. She leaned closer, and he caught sight of the silver tattoos that spiraled up her arms. They weren't just decorative. They were a language, telling the story of her people, her world, her life. What do they say? He asked, touching one of the spirals. That I was born to rule, that I was meant to lead my people to greatness. She smiled, bitter and beautiful. Lot of good it did them. You're still alive, that's something. Is it? What's the point of surviving if you're not really living? Her question hung in the air between them, weighted with more than words. The beacon pulsed once more, and in its light, Draven saw something in her eyes he recognized, the same hunger for meaning that had driven him to break the law. I need to tell you something, he said. What? I've been killing people for 15 years. I've never saved anyone who wasn't already dead inside. And now? Now I don't know what the hell I'm doing. She laughed, a sound like silver bells in the wind. Welcome to being human. The moment stretched between them, fragile and impossible. Here they were, two lost souls on a rooftop garden, waiting for death to find them. But for the first time in years, Draven felt something other than duty or rage. He felt alive. Lisa. Yes? I'm going to kiss you now. About time. Their lips met in the shadow of the approaching beacon. Her mouth was warm, tasting of coffee and courage. He pulled her closer, feeling the smooth texture of her skin beneath his hands. She responded with a hunger that matched his own, her fingers tangling in his hair. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. That was, she began. Stupid, he finished. I was going to say perfect. Same thing. She smiled and kissed him again, deeper this time. Her body pressed against his, and he could feel the strength in her, the coiled power of a warrior princess who'd lost everything but refused to break. I should go, she whispered against his lips. Where? Anywhere but here. This is about you now, not me. No. His grip on her tightened. This is about us. There is no us. There's you, and there's a death sentence, and there's me getting in the way. Let me worry about that. She pulled back, studying his face. You're serious. Dead serious. That's a poor choice of words. It's the only choice I have. The beacon's pulse suddenly stopped. In the silence that followed, they could hear the city holding its breath. Somewhere in the distance, a ship's engines cut through the night. He's here, Draven said. Who? The enforcer. Lisa's hands found his face, her thumbs tracing his cheekbones. Then we don't have much time. No. Then don't waste it talking. She kissed him again, fierce and desperate. This time, neither of them held back. Her hands worked at the fastenings of his leather vest while his fingers found the hidden clasps of her garments. Their need was urgent, driven by the knowledge that this might be their only chance. When they finally broke apart, both were half undressed and breathing hard. The garden around them seemed to glow with its own inner light, a sanctuary carved from the city's chaos. I've never, Lisa began, with a human? With anyone who mattered. Draven cupped her face in his hands, marveling at the delicate strength of her features. You matter, even though we just met? Especially because of that. They made love there in the garden, surrounded by alien flowers and the distant hum of the city. Her skin was silk beneath his hands, her body a perfect complement to his own. When she cried out, it was his name on her lips. Afterward, they lay tangled together on the moss-covered stone, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing the silver tattoos on her arms. What happens now? She asked. Now we face whatever comes next. Together? If you want. She lifted her head to look at him. I want... A new sound cut through the night. the whistle of descending engines. The enforcer had arrived. Draven, yeah? I'm glad you broke the law. Me too. They dressed quickly, hands lingering on each other's skin. When they were ready, Draven stood and offered her his hand. Ready? No, but that's never stopped me before. Together, they walked to the edge of the rooftop. Below, the city spread out like a circuit board, all lights and connections. Somewhere in that maze, death was hunting them. But for the first time in years, Draven wasn't afraid. He had something worth fighting for. The beacon began to pulse again, its rhythm matching the beating of his heart. In the distance, a shadow moved through the sky, dark, purposeful, inevitable. The first arrow punched through the garden's canopy 3 inches from Draven's head. He moved without thinking, tackling Lisa to the ground as more shafts whistled overhead. The projectiles weren't ordinary. Their tips glowed red hot, and thin crimson threads trailed behind them like bloody contrails. Dragon mask, he breathed, recognizing the signature. What? Stay down. 7 swords erupted from his sheath simultaneously, forming a defensive barrier above them. The blades intercepted the next volley with metallic shrieks, sparks cascading onto the moss below. Through the chaos, Draven spotted their attacker, a figure in black perched on the adjacent building's edge. The dragon mask's bow was massive, almost as tall as its wielder, and arrows flew from it with mechanical precision. How many enemies do you have? Lisa shouted over the sound of steel meeting steel. Depends on the day. Another volley. This time the arrows came from multiple angles, forcing Draven to spread his swords wider. The garden's peaceful sanctuary transformed into a war zone as ancient stone exploded under the assault. Can we run? Lisa asked. Not from this one. The dragon mask leaped across the gap between buildings, landing on their rooftop with inhuman grace. Up close, Draven could see the intricate craftsmanship of the mask, carved from some dark material that seemed to absorb light. You broke the law, the figure said. The voice was distorted, mechanical, but somehow familiar. I broke a lot of things today. The dragon mask knocked 8 arrows simultaneously. Your execution is overdue. Get in line. The arrows launched like a swarm of angry hornets. Draven's swords danced through the air, each blade moving independently under his mental control. The sound of their combat echoed across the city, a symphony of violence that would wake the dead. But the dragon mask was skilled, more skilled than anyone Draven had faced in years. The arrows found gaps in his defense, forcing him to dodge and weave while maintaining control of his weapons. You're good, he called out, parrying a shot that would have taken off his head. I was trained by the best. Something in that statement made Draven pause. The momentary lapse cost him. An arrow grazed his shoulder, drawing blood. Draven! Lisa's voice cut through the battle haze. I'm fine! But he wasn't. The dragon mask pressed the attack, arrows coming faster now, each one aimed with lethal precision. Draven's swords moved in increasingly complex patterns, but he could feel his concentration slipping. Then the pressure hit. It came from nowhere, a crushing weight that drove both combatants to their knees. The dragon mask's bow clattered to the ground as the gravitational field intensified. Draven's swords fell like stones, their connection to his mind severed by the overwhelming force. Enough! The voice rolled across the rooftop like thunder. A third figure materialized from the shadows, tall, imposing, radiating an aura of absolute authority. Uncle, Draven whispered. The man stepped into the light, and Draven's worst fears were confirmed. Marcus Cardo looked exactly as he remembered. Sharp features, silver hair, eyes like winter storms. The years had been kind to him, or perhaps power was a better preservative than time. Hello, nephew. The dragon mask struggled to rise, but Marcus gestured casually, and the figure was pressed flat against the rooftop. "Leave us," Marcus commanded. "But the mission is complete. You've served your purpose." The gravitational field released slightly, allowing the dragon mask to move. The figure retrieved the bow and arrows with fluid efficiency. "This isn't over," the dragon mask said, though whether to Draven or Marcus wasn't clear. "No," Marcus agreed, "it's just beginning." The dragon mask vanished into the night, leaving only the scent of ozone and the echo of departing footsteps. Marcus turned his attention to Draven, who was still fighting against the crushing pressure. "You've disappointed me, boy." "Good. Always the defiant one, just like your father. Don't." He thought he could change things too. Look how that ended. Draven managed to push himself up to his knees. The effort left him gasping, but he met his uncle's gaze without flinching. "You killed him." "I executed a traitor. There's a difference. He was investigating you. He was questioning the natural order, just as you are now." Marcus walked closer, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "Do you know what your father's last words were?" "I don't want to know." "He said, 'The boy will be stronger than both of us.' I'm beginning to think he was wrong." The gravitational field intensified again, driving Draven back to the ground. Beside him, Lisa fought to breathe under the crushing weight. "Let her go," Draven managed. "This is between us." "Is it? You broke the law for her. That makes her complicit. She's innocent." "No one is innocent. That's the first lesson of power." Marcus knelt beside them, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You could have been great, Draven. You could have stood beside me when I reshaped this galaxy." "Reshape it into what?" "Into what it should have been from the beginning. Human ruled, human controlled. No more hiding behind laws and protocols. No more pretending we're just another species." The words hit Draven like physical blows. "You're insane." "I'm evolved. The galaxy fears us, nephew. They should worship us." "Father never would have." "Your father was weak. He believed in noble causes and moral absolutes. Look where it got him." Marcus stood, the gravitational field ebbing slightly. "I'll give you one chance. Join me, and I'll spare the girl. Refuse, and you'll both die here." Draven looked at Lisa, who was watching him with those impossibly blue eyes. Even under the crushing pressure, she managed a small smile. "Your choice," she mouthed. "I already made it," Draven said aloud. "Then you're as foolish as your father." Marcus raised his hand and the gravitational field began to compress. But before it could finish the job, an explosion rocked the building. Emergency lights flickered on across the city as power grids overloaded. "What?" Marcus spun toward the source of the disturbance. In the confusion, Draven felt the pressure ease enough to move. He rolled toward his fallen swords, his mind reaching out to reconnect with the blades. "Not yet," Marcus snarled, turning back. But Draven was already moving. Two swords flew to his hands while the others formed a protective barrier around Lisa. The reunion with his weapons sent power coursing through his veins, familiar, intoxicating, deadly. "Run," he told Lisa. "Not without you. Go." Marcus laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think your little toys can hurt me? Let's find out." The battle that followed made the dragon mask fight look like a sparring match. Marcus moved with inhuman speed, his gravitational powers turning the rooftop into a shifting maze of crushed stone and twisted metal. Draven's swords cut through the air like lightning, but they couldn't quite reach their target. "You're holding back," Marcus observed, deflecting a killing blow with casual ease. "I'm getting started." "No, you're thinking like your father. Too much conscience, not enough killer instinct." A gravitational pulse sent 3 of Draven's swords spinning away. He compensated with the others, but the loss of weapons left gaps in his defense. "This is why humans should rule," Marcus continued, pressing his advantage. "We have the strength to do what's necessary. The aliens are weak, divided, content to squabble among themselves. They're free. They're cattle. Another pulse. More swords scattered. Draven found himself backing toward the edge of the rooftop, his options dwindling. "Join me," Marcus said again. "Help me build an empire worthy of our species." "Never." "Then die like the fool you are." The final gravitational blast should have crushed Draven like an insect. Instead, it met a wall of green energy that absorbed the impact without strain. Lisa stood behind him, her silver tattoos glowing with inner light. "You talk too much, old man." Marcus's eyes widened. "Impossible. You're just a fallen princess from a conquered world?" "Yes, but I'm also the daughter of the eternal archive, keeper of the old magics your people have forgotten." Her power manifested as visible force, pressing against Marcus's gravitational field. Where the two energies met, reality itself seemed to bend. "The archive was destroyed," Marcus said, but uncertainty colored his voice. "The archive was hidden. There's a difference." Draven felt his strength returning as the pressure eased. His scattered swords flew back to him, eager for battle. "Now," Lisa said. Draven moved like liquid death, his 15 blades weaving patterns too complex for the eye to follow. Marcus tried to counter, but fighting both gravitational manipulation and archive magic proved too much even for him. The old man retreated, his form beginning to blur at the edges. "This isn't over," he called out as he faded. "No," Draven agreed. "It's just beginning." Marcus vanished completely, leaving only the scent of ozone and the echo of his words. Lisa's power faded and she collapsed to her knees. The silver tattoos dimmed to their normal metallic gleam. "That was incredible," Draven said, kneeling beside her. "That was exhausting. I haven't used the archive's power in years." "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed anything?" He considered the question. "No, I'd still have saved you." "Then why does it matter?" She had a point. Draven helped her to her feet, noting how she leaned into his strength. "We need to move," he said. "He'll be back. Where can we go?" "I know a place." The undercity of Cry Aval rose before them like a metallic mountain, its countless levels stretching up into the artificial sky. Neon signs advertised everything from exotic foods to illegal body modifications, their colors bleeding together in a rainbow of sin and commerce. "Welcome to the armpit of the galaxy," Draven said as they entered the maze of interconnected platforms and bridges. "It's beautiful," Lisa replied, and she meant it. The city pulsed with life, chaotic, unregulated, free. Vendors hawked their wares from floating platforms while hover taxis wove between the levels like metal fish. The air smelled of cooking spices and ozone with undertones of fuel and sweat. "Stay close," Draven warned. "This place eats tourists." They climbed through the lower levels, past gambling dens and black market clinics, past bars where aliens of a dozen species drank to forget their problems. The higher they went, the more precarious the architecture became. Platforms bolted to the sides of towers, bridges that swayed in the artificial wind. "How do you know this place?" Lisa asked as they navigated a particularly treacherous catwalk. "I hid here once, after my first kill." "How old were you?" 12. She didn't comment on that, but he saw the look in her eyes. Pity, maybe, or something deeper. They reached their destination as the city's artificial dawn began to break. The platform was small, cramped, with barely enough room for a sleeping mat and a cooking unit. But it was private, and it was safe. "Home sweet home," Draven said, keying the lock. Inside, the space was spartanly furnished but clean. A single window looked out over the city's sprawl where starships passed close enough to touch. "It's perfect," Lisa said, settling onto the mat. "It's a whole. It's ours." The simple statement hit him harder than any of Marcus's gravitational pulses. Ours. When was the last time he'd shared anything with anyone? "You're hurt," Lisa said, noticing the blood on his shoulder. I'm fine. Let me see. She moved closer, her fingers gentle as they examined the wound. The arrow had torn through leather and skin, leaving a jagged gash that would need attention. Medical kit's in the wall panel, Draven said. She retrieved the supplies and began cleaning the wound with practiced efficiency. Her touch was warm, careful, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with medical necessity. Where did you learn to do this? He asked. Palace life. You'd be surprised how often people tried to kill me. I wouldn't? She smiled at that, her fingers never pausing in their work. There, good as new. But she didn't move away. Instead, she remained close, her face inches from his. The artificial dawn light caught her features, highlighting the elegant curve of her cheekbones and the impossible blue of her eyes. Lisa, don't talk. She kissed him then, soft and searching. He responded without hesitation, his hands finding her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and needy. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. We shouldn't, Draven said. Why not? Because I'm going to get you killed. Maybe. Or maybe you're going to save me. Again. Her hands found the fastenings of his vest, working them open with deliberate care. His scarred chest was revealed inch by inch, each mark a story of violence and survival. So many scars, she murmured, tracing them with her fingertips. Occupational hazard. This one's new. She touched the bandage on his shoulder. You should see the other guy. I did. He ran away. They made love as the city woke around them, their passion urgent and desperate. Through the window, starships passed like falling stars, their engines singing songs of distant worlds. Afterward, they lay tangled together on the narrow mat, skin against skin, hearts beating in synchrony. What happens now? Lisa asked. Now we figure out how to stop a madman from conquering the galaxy. Any ideas? I'm working on it. Outside, the city pulsed with its electric heartbeat, a monument to organized chaos and the will to survive. Somewhere in its depths, enemies plotted their destruction. Somewhere else, allies waited to be found. But for now, in this moment, they were safe. They were together. They were human. And that was enough. The arrow punched through the window at dawn, embedding itself in the wall inches from Draven's head. He rolled off the sleeping mat, pulling Lisa with him as glass cascaded around them. Again, she gasped. Different archer. This arrow was different. No red threading, no burning tip, just cold steel and deadly precision. Draven's mind reached for his swords, but they felt sluggish, disconnected. Something's wrong, he muttered. The second arrow carried a small cylinder that released purple smoke on impact. The gas filled the cramped space instantly, carrying a familiar scent that made Draven's blood freeze. Tibetan sleep moss, he whispered. She knows. Who knows what? But Draven was already losing consciousness. His last coherent thought a prayer to gods he'd stopped believing in years ago. Flashback. 13 years ago. The monastery carved into Tibet's highest peak was dying. Ancient stone cracked under the weight of perpetual snow, and the meditation halls echoed with the ghosts of 10,000 prayers. 15-year-old Draven knelt before the forge of final truths, where his uncle Marcus worked the metal with hands that could crush mountains. The man's concentration was absolute as he shaped the 15th and final blade, the one that would complete Draven's arsenal. This sword is different, Marcus said without looking up. The others are tools of justice. This one is something else entirely. What? A reminder of what you were before you became what you must be. The blade took shape under Marcus's ministrations. Elegant, deadly, perfect. But when he finished, he didn't hand it to Draven. Instead, he walked to where a small figure huddled in the corner. Draven's 12-year-old sister Kira watched with wide eyes as Marcus knelt beside her, Give him your gift, Marcus commanded gently. With trembling fingers, Kira attached the small white rabbit charm to the sword's hilt. The soft fabric looked absurd against the weapon's lethal edge. Why? Draven asked. Because, Marcus said, when the time comes to choose between duty and love, you'll need to remember which one made you human. At the time, Draven thought it was wisdom. Years later, he would understand it was a leash. Draven woke in chains, not ordinary restraints. These were forged from the same Tibetan metal as his swords. They pulsed with suppressive energy that severed his connection to his weapons completely. He hung suspended in a crystalline chamber that rose like a spear through the heart of a massive space station. Through the transparent walls, he could see the galaxy spread below, countless stars bearing witness to what was about to unfold. Awake at last. The voice belonged to the dragon mask who stood on a platform nearby. Up close, Draven could see details he'd missed during their fight. The graceful posture, the careful way she held her bow, the familiar tilt of her head. Hello, Kira. The mask came off slowly, revealing a face he'd known since birth. His sister had grown beautiful in the years since he'd seen her. Sharp features inherited from their father, silver hair like Marcus's, but their mother's gentle eyes. Those eyes were full of tears now. You made me hunt you, she whispered. My own brother. I broke the law. You saved someone. The way you saved that girl when we were children. The way you always saved people. And got 72 lashes for it. You think I don't remember? Her voice cracked. You think I don't carry every scar you earned protecting others? Draven tested his bonds. The chains held firm, their energy signature familiar. Marcus's work, without question. Where is he? Preparing for the final phase. Did you know, brother? Did you know what Uncle has been building all these years? Tell me. Kira moved closer, her bow forgotten. He's been eliminating the other Earthers, one by one, making it look like accidents, like justified executions. Soon he'll be the only authority left. And you helped him. I believed him. He said you'd gone rogue, that you were planning to destabilize Earth's position in the galaxy. He showed me evidence. Fabricated, I realize now, but convincing. What changed your mind? You. She touched his face with gentle fingers. When I saw you fight, I remembered who you really are. Uncle taught us to be weapons, but you taught me to be human. The chamber's entrance dilated and Marcus stepped through. He discarded any pretense of humanity. His form rippled with gravitational distortions and his eyes held the cold fire of dying stars. Touching reunion, he said. I was wondering when she'd figure it out. Let him go, Kira demanded, raising her bow. Oh, child, you still don't understand. Marcus gestured, an invisible force pinned Kira against the wall. This was always the plan. Draw him out, eliminate the last obstacle to my ascension. You're insane. I'm evolved. Do you know what I've accomplished while you played at being a hero? I've infiltrated the high councils of 17 systems. I've placed my agents in positions of power across half the galaxy. When I give the signal, they'll activate simultaneously, and every major government will fall within hours. Draven struggled against his chains. The other Earthers, dead or converted, the few who remain serve me now, willingly or otherwise. Flashback. 23 years ago, Draven's father stood in this same chamber, but it was different then. Warmer, filled with growing things instead of cold crystal. 7-year-old Draven hid behind a pillar, watching his father confront Marcus. I know what you're planning, their father said. The eliminations weren't random. You're building something. I'm building the future, Marcus replied. A galaxy where humans take their rightful place as rulers, not servants. We're not servants. We're guardians. Guardians of what? Alien squabbles? Primitive civilizations too weak to govern themselves? Guardians of the principle that power serves justice, not the other way around. Marcus laughed. How naive. Power serves itself, brother. Always. Not this power. Not our power. Then you're a fool, and fools don't survive what's coming. The gravitational pulse that killed their father lasted only seconds. Young Draven watched his hero crumple like paper, bones shattered, life extinguished in an instant. "Papa?" Draven whispered. Marcus turned, his expression shifting to false grief. "Your father had an accident, nephew. These things happen." Even at 7, Draven knew it was a lie. But Marcus was family. Family didn't murder family, did they? "You killed our father," Draven said now, the words heavy with decades of suppressed knowledge. "I executed a traitor to the human cause. He was your brother. He was an obstacle." Marcus began to pace, his gravitational field leaving cracks in the crystal floor. "Do you know what humanity could achieve if we stopped pretending to be equals with inferior species? We could reshape the galaxy in our image, create an empire that would last forever. An empire of slaves. An empire of order, humans commanding, aliens obeying, natural hierarchy restored." Kira struggled against the invisible bonds holding her. "You're talking about genocide." "I'm talking about evolution. The strong rule the weak. It's the most fundamental law of existence. It's the law of monsters." "Yes." Marcus's voice rose to a shout. "Monsters! That's what they call us already. Why not embrace it? Why not become everything they fear?" The chamber shuddered as massive engines engaged. Through the walls, Draven could see the space station beginning to move, aligning itself with some distant target. "What are you doing?" "Broadcasting the activation signal. In 30 minutes, every major government in the galaxy will collapse simultaneously. In 60 minutes, human fleets will occupy every strategic position. In 90 minutes, I will address the galaxy as its new emperor. And if they resist, then they die. All of them." Draven felt something shift in the chamber's energy patterns. The chains holding him flickered for just an instant, long enough for him to sense his swords in the station's armory 3 levels down. But they were too far away, behind too much security, even if he could reach them. A hand touched his shoulder. Lisa stepped out of the shadows behind him, her silver tattoos glowing with archive power. "Sorry I'm late. Had to find another way in." Marcus spun toward her, gravitational force lashing out like a whip. But Lisa's power absorbed the impact, her energy signature blazing brighter. "Impossible," Marcus breathed. "The archive was destroyed." "The archive was hidden," Lisa said, echoing her words from the rooftop. "And now it's angry." Her power surged, and Draven's chains shattered like glass. He dropped to the platform, rolling as gravitational pulses shattered crystal around him. "Kira!" he shouted. His sister broke free from her own restraints, bow appearing in her hands with practiced ease. But instead of aiming at Marcus, she turned toward a small alcove where Draven's swords waited in stasis fields. "Which one?" she called. "All of them. Which one matters?" Draven understood. His eyes found the blade with the white rabbit charm, the sword he'd never drawn in anger, never used to kill. "The one you gave me." Kira's arrow shattered the stasis field around that particular weapon. The sword flew toward Draven, but instead of going to his hand, it stopped in front of Kira. "I think it wants me to use it," she said softly. "Together? Together." The sword's activation was unlike anything Draven had ever experienced. Instead of the cold hunger of his other blades, this one radiated warmth, love, the memory of a 12-year-old girl who'd seen her brother suffer and chosen to offer comfort instead of judgment. Marcus screamed as the blade's energy washed over him. Not pain, something worse. Understanding, remorse. The weight of every life he'd destroyed in service to his ambition. "No," he gasped. "I won't. I can't." But the sword's power was inexorable. It stripped away his delusions, his justifications, his careful rationalizations. For the first time in decades, Marcus saw himself clearly and couldn't bear the sight. The gravitational field that had been his weapon became his prison, collapsing inward until even light couldn't escape. Marcus vanished into a point of absolute darkness that winked out of existence a moment later. The sudden silence was deafening. "Is he?" Lisa began. "Gone," Draven confirmed. He collapsed into himself, fitting in for someone who thought the galaxy should revolve around him. Kira lowered the sword, tears streaming down her face. All those years, all the lies. "He was family," Draven said, pulling her into an embrace. "We wanted to believe him." "What happens now?" Through the chamber's walls, they could see Marcus's fleet moving to attack positions around various worlds. But without his gravitational commands, the ships were rudderless, their crews confused and leaderless. "Now we stop a war," Lisa said. "The Archive has communication protocols older than the galaxy. I can reach every human commander simultaneously." "And tell them what?" "The truth, that their emperor is dead and his vision died with him." As Lisa worked, her tattoos blazing with transmitted data, Draven found himself studying the sword that had ended Marcus's reign. The white rabbit charm looked exactly as it had when Kira first made it, innocent, pure, untouched by the violence that had surrounded it. "I never thanked you," he said. "For what?" "For reminding me who I was before I became what I had to be." Kira smiled through her tears. "That's what little sisters are for." 6 months later, the sunrise over New Geneva painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Draven sat on the porch of the small house he built into the mountainside, watching Lisa tend the garden she'd planted in the valley below. She'd chosen earth flowers, roses, lilies, things that had no business growing in alien soil. But archive magic made impossible things routine, and the garden bloomed with impossible beauty. "Tea?" Kira asked, settling into the chair beside him. "Thanks." She poured from the ceramic pot he'd made himself. No more emergency brewing, no more meditation before killing. Just the simple pleasure of sharing morning tea with someone he loved. "The council approved your proposal," Kira said. "All of it?" "All of it. New protocols for Earthers, expanded definitions of justifiable intervention, and formal recognition of the Archive as Earth's partner in galactic affairs." "And the other throne hunters? The survivors are being retrained. No more blind obedience, no more rigid non-interference. We're guardians now, not executioners." Through the window, they could hear Lisa humming as she worked. It was a song from her home world, one of the few things that had survived its conquest. "You found peace," Kira observed. "I found purpose. Same thing." "For me, yeah." A ship passed overhead, one of the new patrol vessels staffed by mixed human and alien crews. The old empire Marcus had dreamed of was dead, replaced by something better, a partnership based on mutual respect rather than domination. "Any regrets?" Kira asked. Draven considered the question. A year ago, he'd been a killer in service to inflexible law. Now he was a protector in service to flexible justice. The change had cost him everything he'd thought he wanted and given him everything he'd never known he needed. "Just one," he said finally. "What's that?" "That it took me so long to figure out that the greatest law is knowing when to break them all." Kira laughed, and the sound carried across the valley like a promise of better days to come. In the garden below, Lisa looked up and waved. Draven waved back, feeling something he hadn't experienced in years settle into his bones. Peace. For the first time since childhood, he didn't reach for his weapons at the first sign of dawn. He didn't need to calm his mind for another day of killing. He was home. He was human. And that was enough. 15 years later, the sound of steel against steel rang across the training yard, punctuated by excited laughter and the occasional grunt of effort. Draven watched from the porch as his 10-year-old son Marcus, named not for his uncle, but for the Latin word meaning warlike, though the boy was anything but, attempted to parry his 8-year-old sister Kira's wooden practice sword. "You're telegraphing your moves," the girl called out, her green skin glistening with sweat. She'd inherited her mother's coloring and her father's tactical mind, a combination that made her formidable even at her age. "I am not," Marcus protested, his human features flushed with exertion. The boy had Draven's dark hair and stubborn streak, but Lisa's gentle eyes. "You are too. Watch." Young Kira demonstrated the proper form, her movements flowing like water. "Feel the sword. Don't force it." Draven smiled, remembering similar lessons from his own childhood. But these children would learn different truths than he had. They would know that strength served love, not law. That protection mattered more than protocol. "They're getting good," Lisa said, settling beside him with a cup of tea. At 35, she was even more beautiful than when they'd met. Laugh lines around her eyes, silver threads in her hair that caught the morning light. Her body showed the changes that came with bearing children, but Draven found her more attractive now than ever. Too good. Marcus disarmed Aunt Kira yesterday. She let him. Maybe, or maybe he's actually learning. Their youngest, 3-year-old Elena, toddled out of the house carrying a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. The toy was a gift from Aunt Kira, not the original white charm which still hung from Draven's 15th sword, but a larger version made for small hands. "Papa!" Elena climbed into his lap with the determined focus that only toddlers possessed. "Story!" "What kind of story?" "Dragon story." Lisa laughed. "She's obsessed with dragons this week." "Last week it was starships," Draven said, lifting Elena higher. "The week before that, quantum mechanics." "She gets that from you. The quantum mechanics. The curiosity." In the yard, their older children had abandoned sword practice in favor of a game that involved young Kira using her inherited archive abilities to levitate leaves while Marcus tried to catch them. Both children had manifested powers early. Kira's connection to the archive, Marcus's emerging telepathic link to metal objects. "Different world," Draven murmured. "Better world," Lisa corrected. She was right. The galaxy had changed dramatically since Marcus's defeat. The old rigid hierarchies were crumbling, replaced by cooperative networks that spanned species and systems. Humans still served as peacekeepers, but they worked alongside aliens as equals rather than ruling over them as superiors. Draven himself had evolved beyond the role of hellish throne hunter. Now he was something new, a guardian of the balance, tasked with preventing any one species or faction from accumulating too much power. It was work that required wisdom rather than violence, though his swords remained sharp when diplomacy failed. "Aunt Kira's coming," young Marcus called out, pointing to the sky where a sleek ship was descending toward their landing pad. The original Kira emerged from the craft minutes later, her silver hair longer now, her face bearing the confidence that came with leadership. She'd taken over the reformed Council of Earth's operations, transforming it from an enforcement organization into something more nuanced, a body that mediated disputes and prevented conflicts before they required violent resolution. "Uncle Draven," she called, approaching the porch. "Sorry I'm late. Council session ran long." "Problems?" "The Centauri Collective wants to annex the vegan trade routes. The Vegas want Earth's protection. Standard diplomatic mess." "Solutions?" "I'm thinking joint patrols and profit-sharing agreements. Make everyone feel important while giving them reasons to cooperate." "Look at you, being all wise and political. I learned from the best." Aunt Kira scooped up Elena, who squealed with delight. The little girl adored her namesake, who spoiled her shamelessly and taught her inappropriate songs when her parents weren't listening. How's the family business? Aunt Kira asked, settling into a third chair. Growing, Lisa replied. We've got requests for mediation from 6 systems this month. Apparently, having a former princess and a reformed killer makes for effective relationship counseling. Who knew? Young Kira and Marcus had gravitated toward the adults, drawn by the promise of interesting conversation. Elena remained in Aunt Kira's lap, playing with her stuffed rabbit. Tell us about the council, young Marcus said. He was fascinated by politics, constantly asking questions about governance and justice. What would you like to know? Are we still the scariest species in the galaxy? Aunt Kira considered the question seriously. We're still the strongest, but scary? No. People respect us now instead of fearing us. What's the difference? Young Kira asked. Fear makes people obey until they find a way to fight back. Respect makes them want to work with you. Like Mama and Papa? Exactly like Mama and Papa. Draven watched his family, biological and chosen, and felt the deep contentment that had eluded him for most of his life. This was what he'd been fighting for without knowing it. The right to choose love over duty, to build something instead of constantly tearing down. Papa, Elena said, tugging on his shirt. Dragon story now? All right. Once upon a time, there was a dragon who thought he was the most important creature in the galaxy. As he told the story, a thinly veiled account of their battle with Marcus, edited for young ears, Draven reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. He'd started as a weapon, become a protector, and ended up a father and teacher. The white rabbit charm still hung from his 15th sword, now mounted on the wall of his study. He rarely drew the blade anymore, but when he did, it hummed with the same warm energy it had gained during that final battle. Love conquering law, family trumping duty. And they lived happily ever after, Elena asked when the story ended. They lived, Draven said, kissing the top of her head, and they were happy, and that was enough. As the sun climbed higher, painting the valley in shades of gold, the family dispersed to their various activities. Young Kira returned to her sword practice, this time working on forms that incorporated archive magic. Marcus buried himself in a technical manual about quantum mechanics that he was far too young to understand, but insisted on reading anyway. Elena played with her rabbit in the garden, chattering to the flowers in a mixture of languages. Lisa stood and stretched, her hand finding Draven's. Walk with me. They strolled through the garden she'd created, past impossible flowers blooming in alien soil. The archive's influence had made the entire valley more fertile, more alive. Birds that belonged to a dozen different worlds nested in the trees, their songs creating an interspecies symphony. Any regrets? Lisa asked. The same question Aunt Kira had posed years earlier. Just one. What's that? That we can't have more lifetimes to do this again. She smiled and squeezed his hand. Maybe we don't need more lifetimes. Maybe this one is enough. In the distance, their children's laughter echoed across the valley, mixing with bird songs and the gentle whisper of wind through impossible gardens. The sound carried the promise of futures yet to be written, of choices yet to be made by those who would inherit the galaxy they'd helped reshape. Draven had broken the law to save one person and ended up changing the fate of billions. His children would grow up in a galaxy where such choices were not just permitted but celebrated, where love was recognized as the highest law of all. He'd found his peace at last, not in the bottom of a teacup or the meditation before battle, but in the simple act of watching his children discover their own paths to tomorrow. The greatest legacy wasn't the empire he'd helped prevent or the laws he'd helped change. It was the laughter of children who would never have to choose between duty and love, because they would know that the two were meant to be the same thing. The end. Years later, when scholars wrote the definitive history of the post-Marcus era, they would note that the galaxy's transformation began with a single act of defiance in a slave market. They would catalog the political changes, the new alliances, the reformed institutions, but they would miss the most important part of the story, that sometimes the greatest revolutions begin not with grand gestures or political manifestos, but with one person looking at another suffering